sponsored by Cadbury, the nation's favourite.
Eastwood.
I'm just a fella now.
He was tough once.
My wife cured me of that.
He can be tough again.
I ain't like that anymore, kid.
A once pretty lady deserves revenge.
How about it, Will? How about being my partner?
Are you really gonna kill them cowboys?
Assassin! Starring, produced and directed by Clint Eastwood.
Take out your pistols and shoot him down like the mangy scoundrel he is.
Winner of 4 Oscars. Unforgiven. A movie premiere Saturday at 9 on LWT.
Are you sitting comfortably?
Yeah.
Then I'll begin. Woolworths promise parents that if you can buy any of their toys or games cheaper somewhere locally, whether it's a twirling ballerina Barbie or an action man snowboard raider, they will refund the difference. The end.
You're pulling my leg.
It's true.
Do me a favour.
No.
Get off it.
No. It's true. The Woolworths toy price promise. It's no fairy story.
New in '96, introducing the spacious 3-door family runabout. Also, from McDonald's, this double hamburger for only 89 pence and this double cheeseburger for only 99 pence. But what do the ordinary public think? So there you have it. The new McDoubles from McDonald's. 8.5 grand less expensive than a 2-litre hatchback with alloy wheels. Ooh, and a sight tastier too.
Simon and Broke, Ollie, Kemp and Ellie.
Back to bed.
Tortellone with tomato
And mascarpone cheese.
There's a store that offers you an amazing choice in quality frozen food. You guessed it.
Madagascar.
Vanilla ice cream. Phew, if I eat all that, I'll have to go to bed.
Iceland, we're full of surprises.
Good morning, madam. I've come to buy some toys. Good morning. I'm looking for an action man like me. Barbie, please. A big one. Sky, dance the carousel, please.
Shop with confidence at Woolworths.
I'll take them. What are those flying things? Look over there.
If you can buy your child the same toy cheaper locally, we'll refund the difference.
Don't bother wrapping it.
And that's a Woolworths toy price promise.
You two didn't scare me.
Oh, do we know?
Taggart returns Thursday the 19th of September at 9 on Carlton.
Hey, what happens if we raise the dead?
That's the whole object of the exercise, Jonathan.
6 of us are dead or damaged. And I'm the next one in line.
Eerie goings on in Chile. Tonight at 10:40 on Carlton.
A roundup of today's news from our region is in half an hour, and that follows tonight's news at 10. You're watching Carlton.
From ITN News at 10 with John Suchet.
Stealth sent in as US prepares new attacks on Iraq. Unions rebuff Blair and set a minimum wage. The children paying the cost of Liberia's civil war. And in football, Manchester stumble in the clash of the European giants. Good evening. The United States was shaping up for another attack on Iraq tonight after a missile was fired at American aircraft patrolling the no-fly zone in the north. 8 stealth aircraft are now being sent to the Gulf, and B-52 bombers have been moved up to within striking distance of Iraq. The American Defense Secretary William Perry said Iraqi forces would very soon learn America wasn't playing games. He said any US retaliation would be disproportionate to Iraq's provocations. RAF tornadoes in the region are also on high alert. ITN's Colin Baker reports from Washington.
America's third strike against Iraq could happen within hours. B-52 bombers have now been moved to Diego Garcia, the British base in the Indian Ocean. These giants were used last week in the first cruise missile attacks against air defense systems in southern Iraq. Stealth fighters have also been ordered into the region this evening by the Pentagon. US impatience with Saddam seems fully stretched, and a third combined naval air attack against Iraqi installations now seems unavoidable.
In Iraq, air defense crews are playing some kind of a game. They will very soon learn that we are not playing games. We have both the ability and the resolve to protect our interests and to protect our flight crews.
Reinforcing a hardening stance, the Navy may also be sending a second aircraft carrier battle group. During the day, American F-16 fighters reported that an Iraqi surface-to-air missile had been fired at them as they patrolled the no-fly zone in northern Iraq. The jets took evasive action, and the Iraqis turned off their radar before the fighters could fire back.
They have painted and fired at our aircraft, and we have to retaliate. But we have to do more than we did with that last strike of 44 cruise missiles. It wasn't good enough, wasn't heavy enough. That's the only real criticism the president's taking.
And while the president's campaigning, he's being kept in constant touch with the Defense Department's latest strategy for dealing with Saddam. Where and when another strike will take place has probably already been decided. Another strike against Saddam will be the third this month. It probably won't be the last. But strong-arming Saddam isn't going to lose President Clinton any votes, providing he wins. Colin Baker, News at 10, Washington.
Despite the threat of another American strike, Saddam Hussein seems to be the clear victor from the conflict between the rival Kurdish groups. The victory by the faction he backed, the KDP, looks like putting him back in effective control of all northern Iraq. Kurdish refugees from the fall of Sulaymaniyah are now going home, as our senior foreign correspondent Michael Nicholson saw today. He sent this report by satellite phone.
As we reported last night, given assurances that it was safe to return, they would. Today they have. News that there was a general amnesty across Kurdistan, one agreed to even by the Iraqi President Saddam Hussein himself. They came back over the mountains any way they could. It was their fear of Iraqi troops, their certainty that they were about to enter the city of Sulaymaniyah, that panicked them to leave in the first place. Members of the PUK, the party ousted from power in this region, have taken refuge on the border with Iran, along with their families and their troops. It will be some time before they can be persuaded to return. Though that is hard to believe in the carnival atmosphere today in Sulaymaniyah, that anyone is at risk. But there are scores to settle, and some PUK members and their families may never be safe coming back. What is emerging tonight is the prospect of an agreement between the KDP leader, Mossad Barzani, now the undisputed overlord of Kurdistan, and Saddam Hussein. Such an alliance would pose the Americans particularly with a dilemma. If the Kurds say yes to Saddam Hussein, what business is it of President Clinton? Michael Nicholson, News at 10, Sulaymaniyah, Northern Iraq.
Here, the TUC defied Tony Blair today and voted overwhelmingly for a national minimum wage of £4.26 an hour. Mr. Blair said he wouldn't be bound by the vote. He said a Labour government would decide its own figure after listening to everyone, not just the unions. Here's our political editor, Michael Brunson.
On the face of it, Tony Blair's relations with the union seem to be getting worse and worse. There's clear unease that is telling the postal workers today to hold a new ballot, and about his attitude to public sector strikes in general. Add to that the open defiance of his wishes as the TUC voted to put a figure, £4.26 an hour, on Labour's plans for a minimum wage. The Prime Minister said Mr. Blair was frightened of naming a minimum wage figure himself because that would reveal how many jobs it would destroy.
Either he's being unbelievably indecisive, or he's not telling us about a policy he must know the answer to. Well, I think he should come clean.
Mr. Blair expects attacks from the Tories, but from the unions too. Arthur Scargill's no longer in the Labour Party, but he voiced the frustrations of many trade unionists who still are.
And I'm sick and tired of listening to Labour leaders tell us not to rock the boat and then intervening in our affairs and telling us they don't want a minimum wage.
And the strong view that the TUC had the perfect right to make its own decisions came from Unison leader Rodney Bickerstaff.
We're not in the pockets of the Labour Party, and the Labour Party is not in the pockets of the unions.
But that sort of talk is not upsetting Tony Blair as much as you might think. He says that the unions can make their points and he'll listen. But that others, employers on the minimum wage, the general public on strikes, can make their points and he'll listen to them too.
It's nothing to do with union bashing or any of the rest of the nonsense. It's to do with responding to matters that are in the public interest. And the Labour Party, whether it's in opposition and if it's going to become a successful government, has to govern this country for all the people without fear or favour. And the 1990s is not the 1970s.
But the Tory reply is that it's nonsense to think that a Blair government would ever upset the unions.
The Labour Party cannot have an arm's-length relationship with the trade union. They are Siamese twins. The trade union movement sponsors members of the Labour Party. They fund them to the extent of over £6 million a year. They have half their votes at conferences. And the Labour Party's agenda is the trade union's agenda.
The Liberal Democrats, who say they've always urged a clear framework for the handling of disputes, say Labour have left things too late.
What the Labour Party ought to have done at least a year ago is sit down not just with the TUC, John Monk seems to be very much on Tony Blair's side, but with the individual union leaders.
But to Tony Blair, that smacks of the old deals done with trade union bosses in the smoke-filled rooms of the past. But in the past, every Labour leader has needed their help. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
The number of people out of work and claiming benefit fell by 15,500 last month to just over 2.1 million, the lowest total for more than 5 years. Inflation figures are due tomorrow. They're expected to show a fall to just 2%. The humanitarian cost of the civil war in Liberia became all too clear today. With a truce now in force, civilians have emerged from the forest, desperate for food. 4 out of 5 are said to be seriously malnourished. It's only in the last few days that aid workers have managed to reach Tubmanburg. They've evacuated scores of starving children to the capital Monrovia, but fear they'll find similar scenes of starvation in other parts of the country. Our Africa correspondent Steve Scott reports.
Starving and desperate, the scene which confronted aid workers arriving at Tubmanburg. Cut off for 7 months, the people here have been caught up in an undignified fight for what little food was available, a fight for life, in which, inevitably, the children, too weak to fend for themselves, suffered the most. And these are the lucky ones. Help has come just in time. For hundreds of others, it did not. And even though emergency supplies have finally reached the area, some have collapsed and died on their way to collect their rations, just yards from the handout points. Doctors report the majority of children are showing the worst stages of malnutrition and estimate up to 20,000 could be starving, a situation they have not encountered in Africa since the Somalia crisis. The queues to get to the high-protein foods are surprisingly orderly. They've waited long enough. For most, at least, it seems a few more hours doesn't matter. This man shows what peasant families in this forgotten town have been forced to live on since February. Edible plants and leaves scavenged from the thick jungle that surrounds them. The aid agencies have their chance thanks to a ceasefire between the warring factions. It's being followed by a disarmament program. On show, some of the heavy weaponry already handed in that has cost 150,000 lives since civil war broke out here in 1989. But previous peace deals here, paving the way for elections, have broken down, resulting in more mass killing as rival leaders vie for control. The aid agencies are now trying to persuade the factions to open up other routes to other isolated areas. When they do, they expect to find more starvation and more death, especially among Liberia's children. Steve Scott, News at 10, Abidjan.
Here, Kent police said today Josie Russell obviously had a clear memory of the hammer attack in which her mother and sister were murdered. The 9-year-old has now told them she waved to the killer when she first saw him in a parked car. She said he looked very much like the E-fit picture of a man seen in the area by other witnesses. Our South of England correspondent Robert Hall reports.
Police have always believed that a hammer was used in the murders of Lynn and Megan Russell. The item, now undergoing forensic tests, was found in a hedgerow close to where a blood-stained sports bag had already been recovered. Detectives are tonight trying to establish where it was bought and how it came to be hidden there. They've also released more detail of interviews with survivor Josie Russell. Her vivid memories have added to reconstructions of that tragic afternoon in July.
This lane lies on the route home followed by Lynn Russell and her daughters. Police now know from Josie that the family came across a man sitting in a parked car, possibly in this field entrance. Josie says she waved at him, but he made no response. Minutes later, as the family walked on, he reappeared and the brutal attack began.
Emerging from woodland, he turned first on Josie, then her mother. The 9-year-old is said to have reacted strongly to this police photo fit of the attacker.
There is a temptation to go straight in there and ask her all sorts of questions, direct questions, but that's totally inappropriate. And most importantly, we can't do anything or say anything to Josie that in any way is going to damage her road to recovery.
Josie has made it clear she wants to help, and specially trained officers will resume their work with her tomorrow. Robert Hall, News at 10, Kent.
More news still to come, including tonight's football action and the trial opens of a man accused of billion-pound bank fraud.
It's big, it's ugly, it's worldwide, it affects every program and it affects every person on this planet.
The computer bug threatening turn-of-the-century chaos. And singing for 30 years.
Like a leaf on a tree.
The grandmother from North Yorkshire gets the surprise of her life.
Dans l'Eurostar, j'ai la liberté de bouger. On the Eurostar, I have the freedom to move, to think, to work, to breathe. Je me demande, and so I have to ask myself, does a bird in a cage sing as sweetly as a bird who is free?
I found the right mobile for me.
Hi. I found the right page.
Everything you wanted to know about all types of communications behind one door.
I found it safer to surf the net.
Who can answer all your questions? Sandy can.
Stand up, please. Oh, what's this?
What tickets go? Free with a paper.
Oh, thanks.
Only 10p today.
10p? Great.
On Thursday, you can get the Evening Standard and Hot tickets for only 10p. Find out what's happened, and then find out what's happening. The Evening Standard and Hot tickets. Plenty to take your mind off the journey.
Powerful pain relief. There's an advanced dual-action formula that helps you get to pain before pain gets to you. Nurofen
Plus
codeine
equals
dual action
relief.